Oh, thank you for coming to this course and a really warm welcome to you all familiar faces, I think, or in the main. So yeah, it's really wonderful to have you here. Uh, Talking about a topic that's very dear to my heart, I wanted to kind of say that up front is that I have one son who has ADHD, and mindfulness and compassion have been a massive part of our working together, learning from each other, and yeah, just seeing the difficulties and finding how mindfulness and compassion can help him enormously. He's now 32, so it's been a 32-year process, really. So yeah, just sort of putting that out there in the personal way, but really warm welcome. And yeah, as I know you all, I don't feel I need to do many introductions, but I will. I'm Karen Atkinson. I'm the CEO of Mindfulness UK, and yeah, it's great to impart this information. What I'm going to do, the process is I'm going to take you through a PowerPoint to really highlight some of the key points. There's an appreciation in this session that you have a sense of what ADHD may be and how it presents. I will touch on it, but I'm not going to go into a massive amount of detail. If you want to find out a lot more about having that neurodiversity, then obviously there's a lot of further information out there. So yeah, I describe it as a general, in a general way, but don't go really deeply into the detail of it. So yes, and please feel free to ask questions at the end. So if there's anything that comes up for you, just jotting them down, and then there's an opportunity to do that. So I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes, something like that, and then there's time for you to ask me whatever you like. So let me just get my PowerPoint up. So what we're looking at is ADHD-friendly mindfulness and how supporting focus, regulation, and the development of self-compassion is incredibly important in working with people, living with people who experience ADHD. And so this is meant to be a 30-minute free webinar. It might go a little bit longer depending on the Q&As at the end. So really, a lot of what I'm saying is pertinent to everybody who comes on the course, but there are some real specifics around this. Um, and we don't we sort of meet everybody where they are, and I think that that's really important. And it is helpful to have an understanding, an appreciation of how somebody with ADHD might engage with or not engage with mindfulness and compassion, and how to support them in doing so through your teaching and your expertise. So here is a simple definition of what ADHD is. And actually, it's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. But some people can suffer with the ADD without the hyperactivity. So I think it's helpful to understand that too. It's a neurodevelopmental difference linked with attention regulation, activity levels, impulse control, and executive functioning. It is not a lack of intelligence, effort, or care, and that's imperative to understand. It can show up as distractibility, restlessness, impulsivity, emotional intensity, that often they have sort of a rich internal emotional world, difficulty starting or finishing tasks, fluctuating focus and feeling overstimulated or depleted, sometimes very overwhelmed. There can be masking, and this is especially true in girls, but not exclusively in girls. So trying to keep the obvious symptoms of ADHD at bay and sort of covering up withdrawing often, and it can be really debilitating, and actually it can show up in other ways. Research points to real differences in attention networks, executive functioning, inhibition, reward processing, and self-regulation. It can affect children and adults, and actually, we're seeing more and more adults being diagnosed with ADHD than ever before. Uh, so it's very interesting to see. There's a little bit of a bandwagon about ADHD at the moment, where people say they have it because they're sort of a bit distracted, and it's kind of finding the right level of understanding of the difference between sort of a presentation, sometimes diagnosed and sometimes not, and what distraction, just general distraction of today's society can look like. And it continues across a lifespan, but it is absolutely possible to go from a very dysregulated place to learning skills and tools to become much more neurologically regulated, which is absolutely the work that we can support people with. Presentations can look different from person to person, and some people appear restless or impulsive. I'm sure that you've taught people maybe who sort of sitting there and jiggling their foot or lying down and they're sort of wriggling about while doing perhaps a body scan practice and just can't lie still. Some are more internally distracted. So people who often suffer with high levels of anxiety or sort of say, oh, my thoughts are just always racing and I can't seem to focus or concentrate. They're mentally busy, is important to acknowledge. And this rich emotional internal world can lead to emotional flooding, and the exhaustion that I've already mentioned from masking and effort. Often there's a spiky profile that can be difficult to appreciate without an understanding of ADHD. Now, what does a spiky profile mean? It means that sometimes I just think about my son, for instance. He has the most incredible long-term memory. He knows, he can remember everything that I've said since the age of 2, practically. And knows what I would be wearing in a situation and whatever. And it's not always a difficult or a challenging situation. It's just the whole of life. He is the one to go to if I forget something. But he can't literally, if he turns up after work in the afternoon, he cannot really remember what he did in the morning. If I ask him in 2 or 3 days, he will be able to remember. So there's that processing that takes a long time. And I often think of it as a big funnel where there's so much information coming in, and there's like a log jam in the funnel as that massive amount of information comes in, and it takes a few days, sometimes a few weeks, to process the information. There's like a log jam in that funnel, the stick bit of a funnel, whereas a neurotypical person can take in that information and discern which bits of information are relevant, and it processes down through the slim part of the funnel very easily. So it's like everything comes in and they have to take time to process what is important, what isn't, what's relevant, what isn't, and so on. So really important, it's not a character flaw, it's a difference in how attention, regulation, and energy are organized. So what we do as teachers, as we do with everybody, we welcome people in, we listen to their expectations, we observe, we're aware of perhaps having an eye out for people who are presenting in this way. Often with assessments, people do not talk about having ADHD. Some are undiagnosed and don't feel that it's appropriate to mention it, and a lot of people don't know that they have it. And so it's helpful as a teacher to have this in the back of your mind all the time as certain presentations start to show themselves. It's not about forcing concentration or clearing the mind. This is an important message to come through. Often people arrive saying, I can't actually meditate. I know I can't clear my mind. And I can't concentrate for more than 2 minutes on anything. So I don't know how I'm going to be able to do this. So they often can start in a place of being self-deprecating or shame sometimes. really setting the tone that there's no perfect way to practice mindfulness, and it's about us teaching what we know and helping them, and this is absolutely part of inquiry and discussions, helping them to take ownership of what we're teaching and be able to work it into their daily life. Being really genuine about welcoming people to move and fidget and stand up and look away and turn off their camera, to listen or not to listen, to do whatever they need to do in order to look after themselves. I've literally just finished teaching my CMR for cancer, and there was somebody who had ADHD on there, and she had a fidget spinner and just used that all the time and came in and out of the screen, and was always late, and so I always sent her the link beforehand so that she could find it. And I just made some adjustments that I knew that she would need. I didn't say anything ever to her. I just did these adjustments, and suddenly she'd find the email and she'd appear, usually a few minutes later, and that's okay too. But so giving permission to practice in ways that suit them, as we do with everyone. So we can never preempt it. It's helpful to know what's here right now, what their energy is like. Sometimes doing those check-ins early on within a session is helpful. Are they busy, tired, restless, distracted, calm? Realizing there's nothing to fix, and that just noticing for now and being here is enough. Which is why my heart's practice, I talk about enough, that we are enough here in this moment. I'm really supporting people in seeing that. So ADHD and the nervous system is not a lack of effort or intelligence. It involves differences in attention regulation, emotional intensity, which takes up a lot of energy, and that nervous system sensitivity, that hypersensitivity, the hypervigilance, filtering the stimuli. Everything seems really important, and they don't know which one to filter. There's a fluctuating focus sometimes. So sometimes people can be very focused in on one practice, say a movement practice, but really find the breath awareness practice hard because there's the stillness there. So that it shifts and changes. And they have fast moving thought patterns often. So why this matters is that ADHD nervous systems can move quickly between stimulation and depletion. Overwhelm and shutdown are often nervous system responses rather than signs of laziness or failure. So that's what I say, that longer practices take a lot of not only attention but consume a lot of energy for people who are very distracted, and can be extremely depleting. So shortening the practices are helpful, which of course we're going to talk about a little bit more. And mindfulness can support small moments of pause, awareness, and regulation without demanding perfect stillness or perfect concentration. So attention may shift quickly even when someone cares deeply about what they're doing. So they can set their intentions. I'm going to do this. And then suddenly something else happens. And it doesn't mean that they don't care anymore or that they've reneged on their intention. It's how they are. And that's just the way that it is. And noticing your own, as a teacher, your own reaction to that is really helpful. Emotional reactions can feel immediate and intense, and sometimes there's not a filter to be able to think, oh, this isn't quite the right presentation of the way to be in this circumstance, this moment of the course or whatever. And as a teacher, we need to, as always, discern whether we're going to take our time out to really take care of emotional regulation and reactivity. And sometimes, because you might have another 6, 7, 8 people within the session, and you've got your program, that there's not an opportunity to do all that you feel you need to do in that moment. But that doesn't mean you leave them as they are. You follow up afterwards. Overwhelm can come from internal thoughts and external stimulation, or both. There's often a for sensitivity to other people within the session and what they say, even though it can be said from their own, the other participants' own personal experience, it can be quite impactful. So there's um, a managing the group dynamic situation that comes into it too. And it becomes more useful when it works with the nervous system rather than against it. So recognizing that dysregulation and teaching ways, as we do, of how to become more regulated. So how do we do that? Well, mindfulness instructions can sometimes feel quite difficult. So we sometimes say that we need to sit still, we need to focus on the breath or the knee or whatever. We invite to bring the attention back, which is very difficult for people with ADHD. We invite them to try to settle the mind. There are long practices. There's an emphasis on concentration, like an open awareness concentration, but still being able to pay attention. A recall of practice experiences in the previous week. So, what did you do yesterday? How was that for you? Often it's difficult to be able to grasp that because they haven't yet processed what that was like. They could tell you what it was like 3 weeks ago, maybe, really clearly, but not what happened yesterday. And so there's a lot of impact. There can be frustration, shame, or feeling bad about themselves or about mindfulness. I'm no good at mindfulness. Mindfulness isn't for me. Increased self-criticism, more pressure that puts them under a lot more pressure than being supportive. Boredom, we hear about that a lot for lots of different reasons. And for those of you who know the meditation line, there's that dullness of mind sometimes that comes, which is associated with boredom. But sometimes it's a real switching off of an overwhelm situation. So there's different reasons for boredom. And it can compound inadequacies as you don't conform to the norm. So looking around and everyone else is sitting quiet and still. And when it comes to inquiry, oh, I felt so relaxed. Everything was lovely. And actually, there's a raging torrent going on inside sometimes for people with ADHD if they have been invited to sit still and be quiet and focus for half an hour. So reframing that mindfulness is not about perfect focus. Even noticing the mind has wandered is awareness, and that is the practice. And it can wander many, many, many times in a very short space of time. So I just wanted to talk about our Compassionate Mindful Resilience program. And one of the really strong reasons that I developed it was because I wanted to make a program that was flexible, with shorter practices that can be woven into real life. So the program is much more about attitudinal change, and that attitudinal change is around being kinder to themselves when they become aware of, say, distraction or whatever. But it's also about supporting themselves, recognizing what they already do can be seen as strategies to support them, but also really finding out what it is that they can do using mindfulness and compassion to be kinder and to help to change their attitude to themselves by perhaps developing that kinder internal voice, for instance. So that long practices are quite debilitating, as we've said. So small, repeatable moments are often more realistic, less pressured and more sustainable, easier to plan. So just relating to this person that I was teaching very recently, she's at the forefront of my mind as I'm talking, is that she needed to diarise through the 4-week program to make sure that she did the practice, and then she couldn't find her diary and couldn't access things through the portal. And so it's okay, well, what will work for you? I need an audio and I need it on my phone, and I need something to flash up on my phone. Right, well, let's do that now to make sure you do it and you don't lose the thought process that you, or the intention that you're going to do it. So we spent a little bit of time in the session just doing the practicalities. And then she knew that it was a short practice, so it was doable. And it wasn't something that she had to sort of shut herself away and not interact with the other things in her life. She could enfold it into daily life. With walking, going in nature was really important. Being mindful and kind to herself whilst out in nature. So these shorter practices, the flexible approaches, which means that people can take ownership once they understand what mindfulness and kindness is and really blend it into their own worlds every day, to start to integrate it every day, and to have compassion as a of paramount importance alongside mindfulness, to reduce the pressure and perfectionism and give them permission. And this was the strongest word that came out of the last course I did, was you've given, this is from everybody I was teaching, you've given me permission to practice in a way that feels right for me and not the way that other people say I should practice. So that that's the beauty, I think, of the CMRs. There's that flexibility, there's a capacity to differentiate and to personalize. So some examples is one conscious breath before opening emails, feeling your feet on the floor during stress, pausing before reacting in conversation, checking in with the shoulders, jaw, or energy levels, mindful walking or grounding during transition, being mindful when moving, experiencing practice in nature. Nature has an incredibly effective impact on the nervous system. We, as humans, are not designed to be living in white cubes in rooms. We are designed to be out in nature, in whichever way we can access that. And being mindful in nature really helps to regulate a dysregulated nervous system. So invite movement. I can't really stress movement, but as being a really important part of this. I can't stress it enough. Choice is incredibly important. So you might stand and stretch and move a little bit more, or encourage that within your sessions if you know you're working with one person or several people with ADHD. You might invite them to notice one thing they can see, one thing they can hear, one physical sensation. And if the mind wanders, notice that too. And then asking themselves, what do I need right now? And I would add to that sometimes to be kinder to myself. So restlessness is normal. Wandering thoughts are normal. Different experiences are all welcome. And the aim is awareness with kindness and not perfect calm, because that will not happen, particularly at the beginning. So just thinking a little bit more detail about self-compassion, what many people carry is years of self-criticism, particularly if they haven't been diagnosed as children, which is very common. It wasn't well known 30 years ago within the school system. And often people just think they're flawed. So there's that self-criticism, shame, masking, exhaustion, feeling too much or not enough for themselves and within society. The I should be able to cycle. I talk about, when we're looking at mind traps, this word should, and how I've railed against it really. I should be able to focus. I should be more organized. Why can't I just do simple things everyone else seems to manage? It's a real narrative. So we're working with this, supporting people who have decades worth of this internal view of themselves, and how self-criticism increases stress and activates the threat response. It reduces motivation and leads to shutdown or avoidance. But they're here with us. They've chosen to come on this course, whichever one it is, or the drop-in or whatever. So something or somebody has encouraged them to be here, maybe supported them in being here. So I would highlight that. You're making a really positive step towards supporting yourself by actually being here in this space together. rather than focusing on the shoulds or the should nots. What if saying, why am I like this? We explore what support might help me right now. And the reflection, if a friend was struggling in the same way, how would you respond to them? What would it be like to offer even a small amount of that same understanding to yourself? So if you have done the CMR course with us, I do that with the walking down the street exercise where your friend falls over and what do you like with them, and the alternative, we sort of go back and then you fall over and what do you like in that scenario for yourself. So really thinking about the difference in that can be really insightful. So some practical tools is pause before reacting. They're very hyper reactive. Something happens and there's a quick response. And sometimes good, sometimes bad, sometimes in speech, sometimes in action. So teaching to pause, to notice the body sensations. Take one breath, ask what is happening to me or in me right now. What's happening? What does it feel like? And then naming the state, like we do with mind traps. What state am I feeling? Overstimulated, frustrated, anxious, disconnected, exhausted, activated. And then these transition moments that I mentioned before, before meetings, entering home, if they're driving off, and maybe before they're grabbing their stuff and rushing in, just inviting that pause before sleep, before replying to messages, after difficult interactions. And then the compassionate reset is, this is hard right now. I'm overwhelmed. I can slow down. I don't need to do this perfectly. And acknowledging that verbally yourself as the teacher, that I feel that this is really hard for you right now, rather than trying to fix it, that will increase the dysregulation. So this concept of walking side by side with them is just so incredibly important and powerful. And it makes me think of polyvagal theory and how much I've used that over the years, what I knew of that, and I did instinctively with my son was there was no point challenging his thoughts or his behavior or his view of the world. It was the empathy that I brought and talking about, I can really feel your overwhelm. I really feel for you right now, love. It must be so difficult. And I didn't know he had ADHD until he was 29. So I've been working with his regulation. I feel like I was his regulatory system. And that was because I was so empathic and I didn't challenge him most of the time. So normalizing common questions. If I can't focus during mindfulness, you might get asked, can movement be mindful? Does mindfulness help emotional regulation? Yes, it does. What if mindfulness makes me feel more overwhelmed? It can do, but it depends how you teach it and what the teacher is like around it. How often should I practice? Is mindfulness meant to calm me down every time? No. What if I forget to practice? Let's find a way to support you in that. And how can I remember to practice? What would be helpful for you? So it's about, what do you do in other areas of your life to remember to pay the bills, or you've got a doctor's appointment. How do you remember that? What systems do you have in place? A whiteboard, post-its, coming on your phone, ask somebody to remind you. All of these things are important, and it might be within your class that you set up a buddy system so that somebody who perhaps doesn't have ADHD can team up with somebody who does, and then they say, right, I'm going to do my practice right now. Let's do it together, just online or whatever. So there are lots of different ways of working with that. So key takeaways is mindfulness can be adapted, and not only, for instance, can the content of the CMR program be adapted, but it's more about the differentiation of the discussions, the tools that you bring and how you work with inquiry to enable them to be able to take what you're teaching into their daily life as successfully as they can. To know that shorter practices truly are valid, that wandering attention is not failure, that compassion matters incredibly is so important here. And awareness begins with noticing and understanding as well. I think the educational piece around how mindfulness and ADHD can marry up is really, really important. And sustainable support is often small and consistent. And I would say the reiteration too of the same message, because although um, the level of intelligence is there, sometimes you can say something, it just doesn't land, it's gone before it's been perceived. And so repeating the message is incredibly important too. And you do not need to become a different person for mindfulness to support you. The practice is learning how to meet yourself more gently in the reality of your own nervous system and experience. And then just thinking about the next steps. So I'm going to invite questions and answers in a moment. Thinking about perhaps something that you're taking away from today. And it'd be lovely to hear from you, whether you share it in chat or with your camera off, which you might do. Yeah, thinking about you might want to stretch or whatever. And then at Mindfulness UK, we are passionate about making mindfulness and compassion more accessible, practical, and human. The CMR was developed with this in mind, including shorter practices, everyday application, and a compassionate approach for busy lives. So yeah, please do follow us on LinkedIn. I've got two LinkedIn accounts, Karen Atkinson and Mindfulness UK, funny enough. If you're not yet subscribed to our newsletter, our free newsletter, please do join up with that. You can find that on the homepage. And have a look at the CMR programme. And next courses start on June the 1st. There's one in the daytime or there's one in the evening. So 1:30 to 3:30 or 6:30 to 8:30. So yeah, thank you for listening. It feels like a bit of a whistle-stop tour of ADHD after, as I say, 32 years of experiencing it within my life with my son, who leads a very healthy and successful life, and yeah, is extremely intelligent, very empathic, and has very high levels of emotional intelligence. Uh, Really, I would say because he's had to learn, and I've supported him in doing that, ways to self-regulate and can now regulate others incredibly well. As a forest school teacher working with children who cannot be mainstream schooled because of various difficulties, behavioural, emotional, and physical difficulties. So and works in nature. So he's made choices around how to regulate his own nervous system and bring all he's learned to support others. I'm very, very proud of him. Good. So yeah, just wondering if anybody has any questions at all. You can either pop it in chat or you can raise your hand. I will stop recording so that you can feel free. No, just let me stop recording.